All right, welcome to the October 3rd, 2024 regular Board of Education meeting. We are on item 1A, call to order and roll call. Superintendent, will you call roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Ms. Larrett.
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse. Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Huey.
Here.
Please note that Trustee Lofthouse is
Here.
In the building.
walking in.
All right.
Wait, should I call her a roll? There we go.
There we go.
Trustee Lofthouse.
Here.
There we go. All are present.
All right, thank you very much. In a moment, we'll be going into closed session. We will discuss any of the following student matters, including expulsion recommendation case number 2425-2S, employer-employee relations, conference with legal counsel, conference with real property negotiators, and personnel matters. Time will be given to the speakers at the discretion of the board chairperson. The law allows the public to comment or to address the board on any matter not on the agenda, but the law prohibits actions by the board on non-agenda items. I don't see any in-person comments for any closed session items. We have no online comments. In that case, we will recess the closed session and be back at 6 p.m. All right, welcome back to open session of the October 3rd, 2024 regular Board of Education meeting. We are starting now with item 4, open session, and call back to order. In just a moment, we will be on to item B, our land acknowledgement and pledge of allegiance. So, Ms. George, if you don't mind starting with our land acknowledgement.
As the Folsom Cordova Unified School District, we acknowledge that our administrative facilities and our schools occupy the unceded territory of the Nishnawin and Miwok, the original people of the skies, land, and waters, where we work and learn.
We also recognize the presence and the ancestral stewardship of the Nishinan ancestral tribes, the Esto, Nadamuse, the Nisim, the Pewanan to the north,
and the Miwok ancestral tribes, the Amakumne, the Consumne, the Holpumne, the Makumne, to the south along the Great Sacramento River systems since the time immemorial.
We understand that this land upon which our institutions are built was once flourishing with natural resources and sustained by the ancestral knowledge and practices of these indigenous communities.
We acknowledge the injustices of colonialism and attempted genocide that have impacted these communities and recognize the resilience of their descendants who continue to thrive today.
In our daily endeavors of teaching, learning, leadership, and community engagement, we commit to supporting, respecting, and honoring their culture, traditions, and life ways.
We pledge to work together for the evolving vision of the Miwok and the Nishan, especially all future generations.
Thank you, Board. And if you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On to item C, broadcast statement. A broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board Policy 1313 promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among employees, parents, and the public. We will treat staff, parents, and members of the public with respect and ask the same in return. If any member of the public uses obscenities or communicates in a demanding, loud, insulting, or demeaning manner, the board will calmly and politely admonish the person to communicate civilly. Public comments during board meetings are an important component of the public engagement and transparency. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their speaking time to another member of the public. No written public comments were received today. Per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into a two-way discussion on any matter not on the agenda. And then on to item D, roll call. Superintendent, would you mind?
No problem. Ms. George.
Here.
Mr. Merrill.
here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Ms. Larrett.
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Huey.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. And on to item 5, reporting out closed session. We have no items to report out of closed sessions today. So that moves us to item 6, adoption of agenda. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Larrett. Superintendent?
Ms. George.
Aye.
Mr. Merrill.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And item 7, agenda consent. As a reminder, I've moved this item up, so we'll be taking any public comments on anything that's on the agenda. I do want to mention that we will be removing item G so that our student board members can abstain from that vote. I don't see any in-person comments on any of the agenda consent items. Are there any online? There are none online. In that case, unless there's a board member that'd like to remove another item, do we have a motion to approve agenda consent with the exception of item G?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Lofthouse. Superintendent?
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And then item G is approve expulsion recommendation, case number 2425-2S. Again, we removed this so our student board members could abstain. Board members will also refrain from commenting on this because of the nature of the item. So is there a motion to approve item G?
I'll move.
Motion by Ms. Larrett. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Lofthouse.
Ms. George?
Abstain.
Mr. Merrill?
Abstain.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Opposed?
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you. Okay, on to item 8, special presentations. We do not have any special presentations from our students or our staff. Brings us to item 9, public comment. Time will be given to the speakers at the discretion of the board chairperson. The law allows the public to address the board on any matter not on the agenda, but the law prohibits action by the board on non-agenda items. I don't see any in-person public comments. Do we have any online? None online. Okay, on to item 10, reports of district organizations. We'll start with our student advisory board.
Hello, everybody. So we had our second ever SAB meeting this year at Sutter Middle School. It was incredibly packed. We had a long agenda. We had a lot of people. We recently got around 30 students from Mills and Mitchell that we didn't have that many students before. So we just went on a little recruiting campaign. We got 30 more. So now we've broken the 100 student mark. There are like 103 students in SAB. I'm very proud of that. So we all crowded in Sutter's library and we went over norms. You know, I had them write on posters last month, like the norms they want to see in SAB meetings, some elected positions they want to see so they can run for them, some potential issues to tackle this year, and also some events to host. So we went all over those. I made a whole list. I looked at all the posters the other night and made it into one little list, and we went over them. I think we had great discussion and ideas flowing with the 30 extra students that we have, and I'm really looking forward to you with 100 kids this year because there's a lot more discussion and discourse going on in these SAB meetings, and there's double the ideas. It's great. It's awesome. We also spoke about the cell phone thing, one of the agenda items we have today. So you'll be hearing more from me about that. We tried to elect the positions today. However, we ran out of time because, I kind of blame myself. I kind of went on a rant going over the events that we could do. I got a little excited. But so we're gonna elect this month, through email and stuff like that. So we'll figure it out. But hopefully by next month, we'll be really honing in on maybe 1 or 2 events. And be all organized to start for the year. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm glad we have a great start.
That's great.
So Van covered most of the stuff, but I got to go back to Sutter and shout out to Miss Kiefel and all the leadership kids who helped out today. And it's really cool to see how many kids actually are very engaged on their campus. And we are trying to figure out the big question, how can we get back to the school campuses that we talk about, everything we talk about in SAB, how can we get it back to the school campuses? So we've been trying to do all that, and it's just really cool to see all the different school campuses. And so, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Ms. George, Mr. Merrill, congrats. That's an amazing accomplishment, having over 100 students in that meeting and all, it sounds like very engaged and ready to go do some work. So good work on that. We'll move on then to California School Employees Association. Mr. Korn could not be here tonight, but he did want to mention and email me that his report would have been that MOUs 1, 2, and 24 were ratified without issue at the CSEA September 25th meeting. I believe Mr. Corn's not here because he is celebrating a birth in his family. So congratulations to him and his family. And we'll move on then to Folsom Cordova Education Association.
We're still celebrating.
Grandkids, yay. All right, well, good evening, families, board members, staff, and teachers in person and listening in. As Dr. Kaligian would say, we have glows and grows. First, the glows. FCUSD was recognized with PBS awards throughout the district, and outstanding 33 out of 36 schools were recognized. Notably, Williamson Elementary was awarded the platinum status with the aid of Leslie Cottrell and Kelly Samuelson, since the site doesn't have a climate facilitator. We also had 6 schools that achieved gold status with outstanding service of staff members. Those schools and individuals are the following: Cordova Meadows, Courtney Diamond, Gold Ridge, Terry Hopkins, and Charissa Gillian. Sorry if I misspelled or mispronounced. Natoma Station, Christina Cameron and Courtney Morales. Navigator, Melissa Farrell and Gina Traska. Thank you. Ranch Cordova Elementary, Chris Aberson, and lastly, Mills Middle School, Stephanie Cecil Spalding, who has been labeled a behavioralist rock star by colleagues. So congratulations, and let's give them a hand at all the sites who spent the effort to make their sites stand out. So we could give them a little hand of applause. That would be great. Okay, but we do have 2 areas of growth. One is moving in the right direction and one needs intervention. Firstly is the subject of academic freedom. Unfortunately, a byproduct of all the PLC training, there has been a misunderstanding of some of the critical piece of this training. When FCUSD PLC directs site PLTs to have common assessments, common goals, and then focus on common outcomes, possibly the leaders of these sites also interpret that as all teachers teaching in lockstep with one another, that each student must have the exact experience if they are taking the same class by different teachers. However, this goes against the very experts that FCUSD is seeking out in the area of all practice. In the book, The Art of Science and Teaching by Robert Marzano, which on the 14th, several schools are actually delving into, in the book he writes, it is certainly true that research provides us with a guidance as to the nature of effective teaching, and yet I strongly believe there is not, nor will there ever be, a formula for effective teaching. Teaching is an art, and we must guard against the notion that we must all be on the same path without taking in the teacher's expertise, student needs, or the constant flux of daily events. I hope as we are more focused on students, we don't lose what is also important, the teacher. I do want to give a shout out to the representatives and administration at Sutter Middle School who showed great collaboration on this issue. Lastly, the issue of which needs the most correction is communication. This is not district communication under the leadership of Angela Griffin. They are in the process of refining and getting the information up as quickly as possible. It is a huge undertaking. The communication I'm focusing upon is the communication to teachers from ESC administration or those in authority positions. Last year, this body gave direction and created policies for teachers in regarding to timelines for communications, families, and others. And I know that the certificated staff is making huge strides in this process. I am not saying that this is directed to all, but I am saying there have been enough situations to ask this body to create a policy to the administration as well. Maybe not the 24 hours due to the volume, but a week, 10 days, or never is not appropriate. By the time an employee is screaming for help at the administrative level, they are at a breaking point. They need someone to contact them, even if it's not with an answer to the question, but acknowledgement of the communication. Again, I am asking this body to look, ask questions, and come to some type of policy for administration communication, because just as FCEA feels students are important, and it is our duty to go ahead and communicate parents in a timely manner, teachers also deserve the same consideration when they are reaching out. Because as the saying goes, happy teacher makes happy students, which in turn makes a happy educational community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Folsom Cordova Leadership Association.
Good evening. Good evening, Superintendent Swanson, Board President Hui, and board members. Good evening. Leadership supports the organization by providing vision, empowering teams, ensuring open communication. Effective leaders recognize the efforts, offer growth opportunities, and maintain a positive culture. They solve problems, we make decisions, and we inspire through example. Leadership guides and enables the organization to achieve its goals and thrive. This evening, I would actually like to highlight 2 leaders at Folsom Cordova that inspire us to be the best that we can be. First, I want to take a moment and recognize Pam Oyen from ETIS, one of our unsung heroes. Pam is always working tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring that everything runs smoothly for us all. She constantly goes above and beyond to help others, demonstrating incredible dedication and hard work. Her efforts sometimes go unnoticed, but we want her to know how much we appreciate her. Thank you, Pam, for all that you do. We also would like to highlight Don Ogden for his outstanding leadership within Folsom Cordova Unified School District. Your dedication and vision have created organizational structures to foster a conducive learning environment for all. You've done that. It's amazing. I also want to congratulate Don on earning his doctorate degree. This is a remarkable achievement and a testament to your hard work, your dedication, and your perseverance. Your commitment to Folsom Cordova is truly inspiring, and you are a role model to us all. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, District English Learner Advisory Committee.
No report this evening.
Thank you. Okay, on to item 11, then discussion action items. Item A, approve revised board bylaws 9220 governing board elections with Exhibit E1 and Board Bylaw 9223 filling vacancies, Board Bylaw 9323.2 actions by the board. Superintendent, can I pass that over to you?
Absolutely. These items were brought to the attention of the board at our last board meeting that had followed a board policy committee meeting. Most of the changes, if not all of the changes that you're seeing on these 3 policies are recommended by CSBA.
Great. Any questions from the board?
I do have one.
Yeah, Mr. Reed.
It's on bylaw 9223, filling vacancies. If you scroll down to the second page, number 1 and 2, when I read those, I was getting a little confused, but then I went to the education law because see how it was worded there, and it was also worded poorly there. So I'm like, oh, okay, so they're just kind of mirroring the education law. But I would note in paragraph 2, it says, when a vacancy occurs from 6 months and 130 days before, that made no sense to me. The 6 months to 130 days made sense to me. But then when I went to the code, the way it's worded in the code is during the period between 6 months and 130 days. The word between makes the word and between 6 months and 130 days make sense. So I think what we need to do here under 2 is when a vacancy occurs, delete from and add between 6 months and 130 days. I think that would parallel section 5093 of the California Education Code.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Any other questions on this one from the board? Okay. I don't see any. I don't see any questions in person. Are there any online? No.
Yeah, on where it says the number 2, paragraph 2, where it says when a vacancy occurs from 6 months and 130 days, we would be replacing the word from to the word between. So when a vacancy occurs between 6 months and 130 days.
Okay, so unless there's further comments by the board, do we have a motion to approve these items with the edit that Mr. Reed has suggested?
No, I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Lofthouse. Superintendent?
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, on to item 12, discussion. Item A, first read, Board Policy 5131.8, mobile communication devices. Mr. Swanson?
Yeah, tonight, Board, you're going to be discussing three policies. There's the one that is our current policy that is in place for our district, and then there is a policy that I've been calling the medium-sized policy, and then the other one is the large policy. They all have a varying amount of expectations as it relates to cell phone or mobile communication device use, mostly focused in on what grades that those devices are expected to be off and away. So.
And then before you move on, I guess I just want to clarify, at least my expectation for us as a board tonight during this discussion item is that we would be able to come to some consensus on one of these policies of the three to bring forward. I think it'd be best probably at that first November meeting since we'll have a couple of absences in October, and I think it's an important policy. So just so we're kind of in the page around where we're trying to head with these three policies tonight, we are looking for consensus around one of them. Great. So maybe we can start with your categories for them or the...
It's gone between small, medium, large, or the three little bears, right? Like you're trying to get it just right.
Start with the small, so our current board policy. And would that come with any changes at all?
The current policy, as I understand it, isn't coming with any market changes. Trustee Reed, whereas the first policy, did we have any suggested minute changes to the wording in the first policy?
Yeah, what was published was missing two changes that we talked in policy committee. Let's see. If you, let me see where it is. There's a reference to no cell phones in locker rooms. Oh, there it is. Right below, two paragraphs below paragraph 4. It starts off, the use of any electronic device to include cell phones may not be used at any time in the gym locker rooms. We had asked that we add and bathrooms. So, so not just gym locker rooms and bathrooms, we asked that to be added. And then the second one, there's two references to turned off, and we wanted this other one reads powered off, and we asked for the second reference to be changed to powered off as well for consistency. And that one is, I believe, in the second paragraph.
I think, Ms. Reed, though, what we're suggesting is anytime it says turned off, that's replaced with powered off.
Yeah, I think there's only two references.
Yeah, and it really just a clarification of what we mean by turned off.
Right.
So this is our current policy with those couple of changes that maybe we would want to suggest within that. Yeah.
Michelle just needs some clarification on what we're changing.
So Rochelle, we would be moving anytime that it says that a cell phone is to be turned off, that language would be changed to powered off.
Are we looking at version 1
Version
or version
1.
2?
Version 1.
Okay.
Version 1.
Yeah.
Can I pull up version 1?
He wants it on the first.
This should be the current version. I think that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
Oh, no, I think what is being broadcast is the current version, not version 1. Version 1, we're just missing a couple of requests that came from the policy committee.
Bring up version 2?
No, version 1.
Okay.
Version 1 has some green, there you go, yeah.
Yeah, so just nomenclature clarification. So we have current, which is current, and then version 1, which would be a small change, and then version 2. So for clarification, Trustee Reed,
Yeah.
based that the governance team is going to be considering all three tonight in the discussion. Right. Are you recommending that for consideration, even on the current policy, that we're also changing the language to include and restrooms and from turned off to powered off?
My understanding is we were just going to present three different options to the board. One was just keeping the status quo, and that's the first one that was broadcast. And then this, what did you call this one, the medium one?
Yeah.
The medium one, which is version 1, which is just some minor changes and some additional empowering the sites. And then the third one, which is version 2.
Okay. So from a bigger level, the current version, we can make some of those changes, I think, if we want to bring that back, but the kind of the heart of that policy would stay the same.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question regarding because I didn't see the restrooms added in there. And for me, I have a hard time even considering a policy that we don't have a plan on how we will support that. And I know that we don't have the manpower to ensure that cell phones are not being used in a restroom. So I just want to clarify, because I didn't see that added on the first one, which was the current, right? Version 1?
Correct.
Okay. So on the version 1, I don't see that added anywhere, because that would be a change that we would then have to discuss how is that going to be implemented and carried out. And so I think that maybe it was added on a different one.
It was a recommendation
Okay.
at the policy committee that it be added, and it was an oversight on
Okay.
our part, so I do apologize for that.
So was that supposed to be added on the version 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Was there a conversation about how that would be implemented?
We didn't have a conversation in the policy committee about how that would be implemented. And I would say as well, I mean, at least from my perspective here, if we were to adopt version 1 or the large version, I mean, I don't think there's any way we probably could look to implement these until the 25-26 school year. At least that's my thought going in, because they are some pretty significant changes.
Right.
So I think, there would be some time to think through that. But no, we didn't have discussion around how any of this would be, how it would be implemented.
On any of them? On any of the changes?
Right.
I think there was some discussion that this policy seems ripe for an AR. We don't currently have an AR for this, I don't believe. But I would think that.
I don't believe we do.
I don't think we do either. But that would, I think the ARs usually are developed after the board policies are adopted, right? Yeah.
So I guess I want to describe all three of these just so we all kind of know what we are actually talking about making changes to. Again, it's the current version. We can talk about making some of those word changes within that, but that's what we have right now. And that current version is essentially up until a student, from the time a student enters our schools up until 8th grade, there's no cell phone use on campus, period. And in high school, there's no cell phone use in classrooms. There is the ability to use a cell phone when a student is at lunch or in passing period. That's our current version. Version 1, which maybe we can go back to that, is a change that we've discussed before occasionally on this board, which is allowing a site principal in the first grade here in the high school, grades 9 through 12, in consultation with site faculty to request that school adopt the same grades 6 through 8 policy, essentially saying that the site would want cell phone use to be disallowed even during lunch and passing period. So that's essentially this next version. The larger one, version 2, would be a adoption of our 6 through 8 policy across the board in all of our schools. So those are the three that we're looking at tonight, trying to find some consensus around what would we like to bring back when this item does come back to us. So with all those three versions in mind, and we can talk about the verbiage in them and the particular words, but I guess I'm more interested at this moment in having a more high level of those three options. We can work on the words. What options do we think might be most appropriate to bring forward?
I'll start just because I already did, I feel like, but it's sort of the same thing. I think that if we are pushing forward a policy or policy changes, I think that along with that conversation, I get that the AR comes after, but I wholeheartedly agree that there needs to be a plan of implementation before we make large changes. And so seeing a policy on paper in words is simple to change. Like, you can change words, you can change verbiage, you can change expectations, but that's not what it looks like in practice. And so the last time we did this, it was haphazard. Things were thrown at us afterwards where we were not clear. We did not know about the implementation. We didn't know what it was going to look like. And then it was put out, and it was supposedly a decision we made. And it was this back and forth between who made this decision, who didn't make this decision, with yonder bags and this and that. And we spent a lot of money on an implementation of something that didn't work. And the conversations did not happen the way it should have. And I feel like this is more of the same. And I feel like we're setting ourselves up to put ourselves in the same path that we did before, when we're not having conversations about what this looks like in practice. So great. I can see this, I can read them, I can understand why we're coming up with these things. However, implementation looks very different when we're talking about schools of 3,000 kids, 4,000 kids, 2,000 kids, 500 kids. And I think that, again, the same as last time, we're putting the cart before the horse, and we need to have plans for implementation that is supported by our teachers, that is supported by our administration, that is supported by our students. And we're still going down this path where I haven't really seen or heard of much education that's going out to kids about why these policies are changing. And we can continue to change policy, but we also have to change minds about why these policies are in place. And we can't change minds if we're not educating. And so, so I feel like we're just going down this path of changing policy without plans for implementation and without educating our community on why these things are happening. We can turn on the news, we can see these things, but like, we need real life conversations with kids of like how these things are impacting them and why these changes are being made. So,
Any other thoughts?
Just for clarification, Board Member Lofthouse, so are you saying that maybe we need to put something in our BP about how we are going to implement this? Or to the AR? That would be
yeah, I
the
think it would be the AR. So
Well,
I just
yeah.
think that they just need to happen simultaneously, like not after.
After the fact,
Because
yeah,
I feel
get
like
it.
after the fact, it happened without our knowledge, and then we spent $80,000 on things that were thrown in the bottom of backpacks and not used. And so I don't want to find ourselves in the same situation when conversations should have been happening while policy change was happening. I have a really hard time changing policy, and it's a big change, potentially, without a plan for implementing it. And it's not us implementing it. Like, we're not there telling people to put their phones away. It takes a lot of time and effort and energy from our teachers, from our administration, from our from our yard staff, from our in the cafeteria, every single person. This is something that requires every single person to be on board with and know and understand and like what that looks like. And I get that those conversations could happen, but last time it didn't. And so I'm not convinced that they would this time. And that makes me nervous because we got blamed for a lot of things that I had nothing to do with. I don't know if other board members did or not, but so I just don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're putting out a policy comes August and we're like trying to push this out to teachers of, oh, and by the way, you got to keep phones away all the time for high schoolers. So.
Yeah. I think that is why we're wanting to have this discussion now for something that hopefully we do have. If we decide to go forward with one of these, we have a little bit of time to work on that. But I can appreciate that. We probably did rush that last time. I don't know that I regret it. I'm glad that that change took place, but it certainly could have happened in a more efficient way that would have been better for our community.
And I think we also have lots of things to look at in terms of programs that schools now currently use that depend on students having phones. So currently at high school level, there's things that were very costly, again, that depend on students to have a phone. So to use the restroom, to have a pass
That's
to
happening
show
down
up
in-
late to log in on whatever to play Kahoots. You know, there's things that the high school uses that depend on the phones. So
Yes, Board Member Lofthouse, that's actually happening down in Southern California where they are required to have their phones to use the restroom. There's a couple of districts doing that now.
Yeah, so, you know, I kind of, in my SAB report, kind of talked about how we went over the cell phone policy, and I gave them like a little Google form to fill out as they were leaving and they were on the bus because we ran out of time. But I kind of presented them the two bills so they like understand where it's coming from. They know that it's been approved by the governor. It's not like it's not just us, it's the state. So I showed them the bills. I showed them our current policy about the middle schools having no phones. And I mean, they know. Because a lot of them, I'd say a majority of them are middle schoolers and they know. But I specifically got, by Mr. Swanson's request, the 9th graders in SAB right now who knew the phone policy. They've been in 8th grade with the phone policy, and now they're not in their high schools, their respective high schools. And I was getting their feedback specifically. And a lot of it, and from the Google form, a lot of it is negative. I gave them a two, like a multiple choice. It was you pick keep with our current policy after the presentation, or go forward with this policy. I gave them both the things. It was like move the middle schools to the high schools, middle school policy to the high schools, or like keep it in the middle. And it was 74% said stay where they are right now. I know. And then I gave them a big response area where they could type in their thoughts. I read all of them when I got home, and I kind of summarized it. The main thing that the kids were worried about were communication with parents in an emergency. So having them in a yonder bag is not, if we do have the yonder bags, having that is not going to be, they were worried mainly about emergency situations and talking with a parent. And I mean, you know, you have a bunch of parents who are always very strict or they're very protective of their kid. They're texting them every hour. And if it makes the parent and the student feel safe, I feel like the student should be able to do that, like during passing period, text your parents or whatever. There's a lot of discussion about maturity levels in high school. And this is kind of what Mia's been saying this whole year was if you put a restriction on a high schooler, like they're 14 entering high school all the way till they're 18. I mean, I'm turning 18 in 2 months, I'm a senior. Putting these restrictions on them and then completely letting go when you get to college, I feel like it does disrupt that sort of like self-regulation. Like you need to learn how to self-regulate in, like once you go from middle school to high school, it gets a lot less restrictive, you know? And I think waiting, this is my specific recommendation, this wasn't what the students were saying, but I think if we wait to put this middle school policy, because I think we are moving toward an era where phones aren't in school. You know, I think we are generally moving towards that. I think we do need to take this slower though, because we don't know, like I think the kids in middle school right now, once they reach high school, the phone usage will be lower because they've already experienced not going to school with no phones. Because normally you'll get a phone in like the beginning of middle school. Like that's elementary school, no phones. It's like really out of the question, at least when I was in elementary school. And then going to middle school, it's like some new thing. But if you don't have it all the way up until high school, I feel like that habit, those atomic habits have already been set, and it's going to be less people in high school with the phones. But we haven't even like let that really unfold yet because we've only had 8th graders coming into high school and they've only had 2 months to, you know, experience that. So I feel like, I mean, I think waiting a long enough time to actually like really analyze these 9th graders, like maybe end of the year, be like, how's your experience? And I can get all the 9th graders in SAB end of the year, talk up here to the board about it. I think that is the most crucial people we should be talking to are the 9th graders who have experienced both sides and they, you know, tell us their story. I think we are taking this too fast, especially how we implemented the middle school stuff. And I mean, that ended up working out, but for high school, it's 3 times as many students. It's just bigger campuses. Another thing that they were talking about were like talking to friends across campus. I mean, if you're trying to coordinate with some friend of like where to go eat lunch, you can't really do that if you don't have a class, if you're all the way across campus from each other, you know? And that was actually a unique problem that they had. And I was like, I never really thought of that. And then they also talked about their hatred for yonder patches and how they really didn't work. And they would students would cut them. They would, not use them. They wouldn't bring their phones, or they'd be like, oh, I left it at home. I don't need a yonder pouch. And then they would have it, And I think that is a waste of money. And we should be focusing on, a different way to restrict them in however we do it, however it ends up coming after today. But I mean, some students did agree with it. They were saying, I think cell phones are disruptive in class. Like the other 30% were like, it was mostly mixed. It was like, I think they are disruptive in class. I think we should not have them out in class, but having them in passing periods is good. And that's what Cordova High School's policy is right now, is no phones in class. If I see one, I'm gonna take it, or there's like a phone jail. Not everyone uses like a little phone jail with the calculator stuff. But I think that, and then as soon as the bell rings, you can use your phone. You go out, and or during lunch, you can use your phone. I think that is a really good balance, actually, and it kind of puts a lot of responsibility on the student. But that's the important thing. You're kind of teaching the student to be self-reliant, and like manage their own stuff. So my idea would be either keep the current policy, or go with version 1 and then leave it up to the principals, but have a lot of discourse between students and principal. So if we go with version 1, we'd have, or other than version 2, we'd have less students coming in. Because I know if we have a board policy about phones, there would be a lot of public comment from students. It would kind of direct that from the board to the site principals who know more about the site, and it's more specialized. So I think I agree with version 1, and I agree with the current policy right now. I don't think a blanket ban like version 2 would be the smartest idea right now. I think if we're gonna make such a large ban on that, we should move that forward, at least to the end of the year, see how it works out. But I think leaving it up to the principals is a good idea, but make sure there is discourse between site staff and students. Yeah.
Appreciate it, Mr. Merrill. And those are really helpful thoughts. Again, in my mind, I'm one board member here, but in my thought would be if we make a change in this policy, I don't think we can really ask for this to be made until the following school year. Either way, it's October, 3rd, 4th, something like that right now. That gives us a pretty long runway to think about how we want to do this. I agree, we can't make this change and then try to implement it immediately. That would definitely not, I don't think that would work either. Other thoughts from the board right now? Larry?
Not to be mixing things up, but could we do another version of it where we could take the most extreme version, but allowing still during the passing periods and lunchtime to be able to have the phones, but still mandating each of the sites during the school period? Because we do have the policy at Cordova High, but at back to school night, I had a teacher who said, I know that we have this policy, but I know that you as parents need to get a hold of your kids, so I'm totally fine with your student stepping out and taking a phone call from you during class, right? So I have a pretty big problem with that, and I feel like at least mandating during the class period that we don't have the phones is, I think, where we want to be at. I'm kind of okay with like during the passing period and at lunchtime, that maybe another version that's kind of extreme during the class period, but not maybe necessarily as extreme during the passing periods and the lunchtime for the kids to be able to talk and things like that and have that there maybe is like a way to kind of get where we want to be during the class periods so that those are away. But then, if you did have a situation with like, you have your Minga and stuff like that, that there would be exceptions for at least the usage for that kind of thing. But during the instructional periods, when it is specifically for instructional time, that they are mandated to be put away. So maybe there's a way that we can kind of get to where we want to be during that period with still allowing some of the freedom and air for the kids to be able to learn how to responsibly use their phones and things like that.
Yeah, Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I think we certainly can send it back to the policy committee with that direction. I think I would be comfortable with that approach, some hybrid, if you will, between version 1 and 2. That doesn't bring the K-8 policy to 9 through 12, but does empower the site principals. And, we could perhaps even word it where it says a site principal serving grades 9 through 12 in consultation with site faculty and the student council may recommend, so adding the student council so that you get student voice there, may request that the superintendent adopt the grade 6 through 8 mobile communication policy. So that, we could do that. And, I do think we need to add the and bathrooms and figure out in an AR, Board Member Lofthouse's concern on that. But I think we can't allow cell phones in bathrooms or to be used, if you will. So that would be one thing that I would pull over in a hybrid policy. Consistency on that powered off term. I did find that second reference. It's in the second paragraph, second sentence, I believe it was. Did I lose it again? Yeah, second sentence, yeah. So, for that consistency, and I would even almost perhaps suggest that I did like the definitions in the version 2, because and simply reference mobile communication device instead of keep on repeating cell phone, smartphone, smartwatches, all that, because the terminology that's used throughout this is not the same. Sometimes they're referred to cell phones, sometimes they're referred to as mobile phones. We're not even consistent in our current policy. So if we could just simply call them mobile communication device and define what a mobile communication device is, we can take out all of the contradictory language that isn't consistent. But I think that ultimately gets, to what the student board members had suggested, which is let's not take this all the way. Let's take this to, allow for student voice. Let it be at a school site for high school with consultation with the teachers, with the students, with the superintendent. So I think that's a reasonable alternative to give that direction, send it back to policy, have them come back here. And I absolutely agree. It should take effect on July 1st, 2025, not for the current school year. It should take place, which then gives us potentially upwards of a 6-month period of time for staff to develop an AR and get it back to the board in sufficient time to be reviewed by the board prior to the end of the current school year.
I think that makes sense. I have a couple comments. I know we have a public comment, and then Mr. Swanson actually want to, after my comments, send it back to you to get some perspective just from the admin perspective. If there are some thoughts around this. It does sound to me like no matter what, an AR would be important to enforce. It sounds like our current policy is not enforced across the board. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, as far as in checking in with all 3 of our comprehensive high school principals today, it is enforced. And Trustee Laird, I think that's what you're talking about, is like consistent enforcement. And at both Vista and Folsom, they're having about 8 to 10 violations a day. And at Cordova High, it's about 20 to 30. And Principal Strawn said, it is effective. It is a heavy lift. That was one of the things, because there has to be a consequence that comes. And, 20 to 30 a day adds up in a week, right? But it is being enforced, and we have Van here as one data point to say, it is being enforced, right? I mean, so, I just wanted to say
I
that.
appreciate that, and that's good perspective. If, that it is being enforced, and it sounds like it's mostly a good thing, I'm happy to have this come back as a hybrid. I guess I tend to think more, it seems clear from the research that cell phones, mobile phones are not healthy for our students across the board. And if we have a policy currently that says a student is not allowed to use a cell phone in a class, if we are as aggressive as we can be, all we're saying is that you cannot have your phone then at lunch or while you're going from class to class. So, 80% of the day right now, they're not allowed to have them. And if we go with the most aggressive version of this, those are the two things we're asking, but in passing periods and at lunch. To me, that is a big change, and I actually think what we've seen from middle school is that, yes, that was a little bit painful. Students did not want that change. I think we would have had similar results in a middle school survey as well. But every piece of feedback I've gotten, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this has been a game changer for our middle schoolers. Lunchtime is more energetic. Students are talking with one another. So I don't know that I'm in favor of saying let's make sure everybody's on board before we make this change, because I don't know that we're ever going to get there. I like my phone. Students like their phones. I don't think they're going to say willingly, yes, let's give these up. I do think if we know that something is going to be helpful, we should definitely do everything we can to get there. So, I mean, I'm in favor of coming back with this most aggressive policy if it means that we have to take some time to get there with some hybrid models and leaving it up to the admin that do know their students the best. I'm happy with that. I don't want to see us personally stay with our current policy because I think this is a change that is going to be painful and sometimes we just need to make it. So I guess that's my thought. It is a big change, but ultimately we're saying don't take it out for 35 minutes or 40 minutes at lunch. Don't take it out for those 5 minutes that you're walking. Ms. Merrill, I do appreciate the thought around it is nice to be able to text a friend to get across the campus and find them. I absolutely appreciate that, and I assure you that people will find a way, because they did when I was a teenager as well. You know, they'll figure that out. That is an inconvenience to students. I get that. But I guess I see the effects of teaching, like giving somebody 6-7 hours a day without a cell phone. It's much, much larger than, the potential pain of ripping the Band-Aid on a policy like this. Ms. Reed.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would prefer version 2, but the reason why I'm open to this hybrid is because I understand sudden changes that are dramatic cause, disrupts. And I understand exactly what Ms. Merrill's referring to. And I think Ms. Merrill even indicated that, I think it's kind of clear the direction where things are going eventually anyway. I mean, we've seen in just the last 6 months, school districts all across the country implementing what is essentially currently our K-8 policy. Including LA Unified is going a K-12 policy similar to our current K-8 policy. But, at the same time, I have no problem with a compromise and just see how it goes. Ultimately, in another 5 years, we might end up there anyway. The state might even change the law one more time and force us to be there anyway. But, allowing a little bit more flexibility as we get there, I'm okay with a hybrid. Even though I for many reasons, including the studies on mental health, the bullying, the fights, other uses of cell phones or that have created disruptions within the school community. I do feel that eventually the version 2 is where we're going to end up at, but yeah, so.
I'm happy for other questions or comments from the board also, and then we can bring it back as well to talk about how we want to move forward. We do have a public comment, but before we get there, any further thoughts?
I just have a couple things. Semantics-wise, I love, and we've done it a couple times with new board policies where we've written the definitions up at the top rather than kind of embedded within. I think it makes the reading much easier of it, and I know we've put out a couple that have had that. And I agree that eventually we will be getting there to this end goal, or maybe not, I don't know. And I know I also come across as opposed to that policy, but I'm not. I'm actually very much in favor of getting kids with the phones away from them. However, I think that there is a lot more to be done than just pushing out a policy. And so I don't want to rush pushing out a policy when we're not ready to implement it, where with current, if there's 30, with a new policy, you're gonna see 60, 70, 80 violations in a day. And we don't have the staff to keep up with that. And that's why it doesn't get implemented, because there's a lot bigger problems to deal with than a cell phone. And you have to deal with the bigger problems. So then it makes this policy sort of null and void. So without a clear plan to implement and a clear understanding for students of why we are doing this, we're never going to get to that point, because we will have implemented it too early, where then we cannot carry it through. And so I don't want to write a policy where it's impossible for us to maintain the policy, because I think that we are missing that key point of that education. I think that the point of, let's see how this goes with the ninth graders. Like they are just getting started. And I know at Folsom High, 90% of the classrooms I walk through have the pockets, and the kids put it in the pocket as soon as they walk in, and they take it out on the way out the door, and they don't have them out during class. And to be honest, going from Folsom Middle School, teaching there, to then going to visit high school at back to school night, I was shocked to see that, because we couldn't even get to the point where we were sticking them in charts at the middle school at that point. So I think that there are practices in place that are working at school sites. So again, I'm not opposed to getting to this point. I'm opposed to pushing it too early, too soon, when we don't have the bandwidth or the manpower or the plan on how that's going to look to implement, because I don't want it to be a policy that's just not followed, because then how do you go backwards, and how do you make sure it's followed later? It's sort of one of those, like we want to be able to do it right. And if we aren't ready to do it right, then I think that it's too early to do it.
Yeah, and that's I appreciate it's a good word. Ms. Loftus, it is good to remember. It's a good reminder for me that we actually are way ahead of the game on this already, compared with a lot of schools in the state, and even with the bills that have been passed, we're in compliance already. So, even just having them out of the class, that's no small thing. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, let's go to public comment. I do have one in person, Earl Smith. Welcome, Mr. Smith.
Good evening, board, President Huey, Mr. Swanson. Add to that.
Sorry. Things are temperamental.
It's okay. One reason I'm an effective parent, everyone always says, Earl, you're doing an amazing job with Faith. It's not just Faith, it's my teaching too, teaching privately. Yeah, Earl, you're doing an amazing job with the kids. It's because I listen to the kids. There is a lot of students that was at Folsom High that would come up to me and tell me their problems. It's because I listen to the kids. I hear you guys discussing this. I don't feel like most of you are even listening to what he's saying. I'll take it in. But when you do that, you lose the student. What happens if there's a mass shooting at the school? When I started at Folsom High, Faith was a freshman. She can't drive. I'm not comfortable with her taking the public bus, especially now that you guys have known the history behind her. If you've read what I've sent you guys or CC'd you guys on. The district in general does not communicate. You made changes to public transportation, and that wasn't communicate with the community. So how does children at a high school level get about and function? I'm on the fence of it. Mr. McFall, I talked to Mr. McFall quite a bit when Faith was in the middle school about what he wanted to do with the cell phones. I still communicate with him. I told him, look, you need help, I'll come there, do whatever you like. And I do see at the middle school level, I have already about 12 students that are at the middle schools, whether Sutter or Folsom Middle, and they all complain about it, but the parents still have to come pick those kids up, mostly. At the high school level, there's a difference there. Faith did not have a cell phone. She had a cell phone, but it had no service But anyone who had an iPhone and she can connect to Wi-Fi, she could message me through other apps. I'm just asking the board to take a step and not be just a parent or an adult, but look through the eyes of the student. That is the mistake I see with most adults make with children, is they don't listen. And so the student their child just turns off. I mean, if you really think about it, this is your guys' voice. I get it, because kids ditch school and go stab and shoot people and create murders. That's why we moved up here. This is a different district. Just maybe take a little bit of time and see how things work at the other districts, and then start to move what would be the best direction for this community.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have any online comments? No online comments. Okay, so it sounds to me like probably what we're going to do is send this back to the policy committee, if all the board members are okay with that. We'll look at bringing back some sort of hybrid version, something around that version 1, I suppose, but with some changes, and then we can bring this back to the board and see if it is something we want to discuss further. Unless there's any objections to that, Ms. Reed?
Yeah, just quickly, just for the public's benefit, even the current policy, which is a K-8 policy, is not a ban. We do not ban cell phones. Cell phones can be in the possession of the student. They just have to be powered off and not be pulled out at any time of the day. I know some people think that what we're talking about is a ban, that you can't bring a cell phone onto campus. That's not what we're talking about. It's just simply implementing at least the version 2, if you will, is implementing the current K-8 policy, and which does allow you that after the end of the day, you can take your cell phone out and you can power it on. You can do that without being a violation of this policy. So I just wanted to put that for clarification. And one thing, and I apologize, I meant to also mention that I agree with Board Member Lofthouse. I think the yonder bags, that was a surprising development. Because we actually had talked about yonder bags and decided not to do it. And then over the summer, all of a sudden, the yonder bags appeared, which was, yeah, I'm still not 100% sure how that happened. But anyway, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're no longer using the yonder bags, right? And we wouldn't be using the yonder bags going forward.
The yonder bags are currently being used at Kinney.
That's it.
That is it.
Okay.
And I've not heard in any discussion tonight or during the policy committee of having a yonder bag implemented in any of these policies.
Okay.
We've always talked about off and away.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to the policy committee, make some revisions, bring it back to the board, and we'll go from there. Good. Thank you, board, for that discussion. We'll go on to item 13. Oh, Mr. Swenson.
I would assume, just for clarification for my team, our next policy committee is, do we want to bring this back up, or do we want to push out a meeting or two to draft something? Or
when's the next policy meeting?
Maybe we'll push it out.
Yeah, maybe push it to the second policy.
Yeah. We'll do it at the next policy. Okay. All right, thanks, guys.
Good. And I do think, and to Ms. Lofthouse's point, that so that we are not acting reactively and not giving enough time. I appreciate that this is happening now. Even if we wait till that next policy committee, it seems like we can get this on our table, before, so we have at least like a semester to work on how it's going to happen if we do make changes. And I do think that's really important. So that should give us plenty of time. Thank you. We'll move on to
Mr. President, real quick. This whole conversation about yonder bags. So what are we doing with the yonder bags that we purchase? I mean, what happens to those? Is that just something that,
You don't purchase them, you lease them.
Oh.
So they were sent back.
All of them, except
for Kinney, because Kinney did want to keep them.
Good to know. All right.
Good clarification. Ms. George.
Okay, I think from my side of the story, or from what I've seen, is I had to go to the middle schools to campaign last year. And when I was there for all 3 lunches, I think for 2 days. But when I was there, I was actually really, really shocked to see how many kids were not on their phones. And they were just sitting in like circles and they were talking. And it was like one of the most like, I took a photo of it and sent it to my friends saying, this is insane how kids are not actually on their phones. Because I know when I was in middle school, I was on my phone, other kids were on their phone, and people were constantly on their phones. But it was crazy to see how I would say it was rushed and there probably was backlash, but I was not like aware. I know from the middle schools, but I thought it was just crazy how well, even if the students didn't like it, we don't like seeing it from an outside perspective, how well they were doing and how well they were handling it. And I will be honest, like kids, they didn't put their phones in the yonder pouches, but if they did need to use it, they just went to the bathrooms. And I know that's not a good thing, but a lot of the kids, they would just be like, but they knew to take that initiative, like, hey, I can't have it out here. Like, it's a bad thing that they were using it in the bathroom because they're not supposed to be using it at all. But the fact that they were able to understand, like, hey, if I really need something, I'm just going to go to the bathroom and ask, or go to like a private place and just do that. And if we can communicate to the kids that, hey, like if you ask a teacher, like we can't, like you will be allowed to go outside. Because I think fear is also a driving factor in a lot of kids. Like, hey, what if I'm not allowed to like use my phone at all? But what I want to talk about is like more on the side for high school. It's if we implement a very, very strict policy, I feel like, I can't say for sure because I can't predict the future and I don't know the impacts that this will make, but I don't know. I just feel like more people it's just human nature to want to rebel against something, especially when enforced very, very strictly. It's just natural, like, hey, like, I want to just like fight against it. Like, I know all the schools all the Folsom schools had the timing changes. So when it was first implemented, like everyone was here, they were talking, they were like, hey, like we can't have this happen. And people were pushing against it. But then like now that it's being in place, like people may not like it, but it's just being enforced. But I'm just scared that this is a little different in the fact that the kids that we're trying to target with the stronger bill are going to be the kids who aren't going to listen. Like they will be the ones who find ways to get out of it. It's like the kids who really do need this, they aren't going to listen. Like if we already see burner phones in the pocket pouches. Like if we implement something as strong as like, hey, you're not going to be allowed to use this during passing periods, it might just invoke even the kids who like are responsible with it just to rebel, just because they're in such like they're in an environment where it's almost like if I see another person do it, like I want to do it just because that's how human nature works. Like, and it's really important to consider what's going to happen like after it's being implemented. Like if we do go through with, I think even the first one, like, hey, restrictions in bathroom, how is that going to work if we're going to ban phones during passing period? Because how would that even work? How would would we bring back the yonder pouches? And if they are allowed to use it during passing period, then they can go to the bathroom and use it during passing period. So that would be, I mean, even if we did pass it, it would be there would be like nuances to it. And so I would say we would need to figure out like, if there is a complete ban and kids need to go to the bathroom and they need to like, if something happens, like we would need, this is just like a random idea, but like we would need like an emergency button or something. And people are like, I was thinking about how, okay, they're teenagers, like everyone would just like push it, but that's like the same thing with like, the fire drills. Like I'm guessing the first time they put a fire drill in, all the kids were like pulling it. So if we had something like an emergency button in the bathrooms for a full ban, I'm not saying we have we need a full ban, and I'm probably against not having like a ban or just like a simpler ban. We would need to focus on the things that happen afterwards, just because even when I was campaigning, people were like, oh, we didn't know about, like all the middle schoolers, they were like, when they were asking me questions, they were like, how come we never knew about like the yonder pouches, or we didn't know about this? Like, we would need to take it slower and communicate to them and make sure it's not hard on like the teachers as well, because at our meeting today, we had 100 kids, and that alone it was really hard to lead 100 kids. I could not imagine having to lead 3,000 kids at Folsom High School. So it's just a lot of things. Like, I don't think we can we obviously can't like appease or make it fair for everyone, but just to make sure that people know, and just that people they are fully aware of it, and it's something that like they want for like more discussion. And I would say because obviously cell phones are a really new thing, to look at data, like we were talking about the 9th grade data, if there is already some sort of like campus or school that's already implemented through the K through 12th grade, and how they are, because what Van was saying, like, we don't know if the ban is also going to impact kids in their like workforce and college, because high school is a time where they really develop themselves as a person. They need to learn restrictions, and they need to do all that. But if there's some data that we can look at to see, hey, what is happening to schools that have a complete ban? Are people successful? And we can look in the past, almost like we didn't have cell phones in the past, and society, I would say, is doing pretty well. Like, and if we need to go back to that, no, because obviously it's really hard because we don't have the data. But as the 9th graders come in, like from the middle school, they have a very strict ban. Are the 9th graders abusing the policy because they've already had this ban? Are they being like, is it in their nature to just be like, oh, I'm going to use my phone all the time now that I don't have a yonder pouch? So it's like, it's just, there's a lot of like complexities to it, and having to like, I think that really, we need to talk about what's going to happen in the future, or not try to exactly predict the future, but try to find data that we can pull from and see how these policies are really going to impact the student, and just see, I think we really need to discuss more about the complexities, because the yonder bags, I guess, were rushed, but yeah, so that's all I have to say.
No, thank you for saying that. I'm glad you spoke up. And it is, yes, I think it is incredibly complex, which is why I think it was important to start having this conversation now. And I think the data point is really good, and it is tough because, I mean, we are a bit ahead of a lot of this. There's not a lot of data out there. So whatever we can learn from some policies that are going to be enacted soon here, I think we should learn. Just some closing thoughts, and anybody else is certainly welcome to add anything as well. But I do remember when we talked about this policy for our 6th to 8th graders, a lot of that discussion was around, well, yeah, but people are going to cheat the system. We're not going to be able to enact this. I've actually been quite shocked, like how much people went along with the students themselves. Of course, they learned how to open the yonder bags. Of course, I mean, all of that stuff. But like the socialization part of the learning process seemed to have actually worked really well, which was really interesting to me. But I also like your point, and I think it's worth thinking about how we roll it out is really important. To Ms. Lofthouse's point too, how we educate around this while we're rolling it out is really important. It makes me think, when we enacted this, if I'm remembering correctly, Folsom Middle and Sutter Middle started the year with yonder bags day one. And I think both Mitchell and Mills waited at least 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks did do maybe some education around this. This is coming. This is what it's going to look like. And then rolled it out. All 4 schools seem to have done in the end, have done a good job. But maybe tonight's not the night, but it'd be interesting to see from those principals' perspectives and from any of the data that we could have seen on the ground, what difference did those 2 weeks make in being able to roll it out? And maybe it would need longer than that, I don't know. But we actually maybe do have a couple of models where we saw at least a little bit of education.
I think for me, when I say education, I'm not talking about education of the policy. I'm talking about the education of the why. Yeah. So who are we getting in? What experts can we get in to have conversations with the kids and really have them know and understand the why, not the what. Like that, yes, there was different ways of doing that, but I think that when I say education about it, it's the why, not the what.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I would say probably with parents too, right? Yeah. Good. Well, again, I appreciate the discussion, and it sounds like we do have a plan moving forward, which is bring it back to the policy committee. We'll look at that hybrid model, and then we can come back to this board with it. So, any last thoughts? Mr. Reed?
I hadn't heard that of using the bathroom because they didn't want to violate the policy in front of an adult. So students always find workarounds, right? But I started to think about this, and who in the room remembers when you used to fly the smoking section in the airplane? If you're old enough, right? Remember the smoking section in the airplane? It was in the back of the airplane. It almost reminds me of that. Do we have a cell phone section eventually on a campus? So for the students that need to get their fix on their cell phone, they could go to the cell phone section, and once they get into that section, they can take it out. But if you walk out of that section, it's powered off, and I don't know. It's just
Problem is, you just smell like cell phone all day. Sorry.
So, but anyway, it's just I don't know why that amused me so much, but I thought I'd share.
It's a good point about changing things that feel normal in the moment, right? It's not always easy. It takes a lot of time, but
I do think we'll have data one way or the other within 2 to 3 years, though, because the number of school districts across the country that are implementing this, we will have high school data to take a look at in a couple of years, I think. Yeah.
I was just going to comment. Last night at our safety committee meeting, we did talk about concerns that the safety committee had, and one of the concerns that did come up was the social media and texting death threats and different things like that, right? And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity here if we're going to be talking about cell phone usage, and from the perspective of the safety committee, that there's some opportunity there for us to cross-pollinate some of those safety issues with the mental health perspective of cell phones and the damage that they can cause in multiple areas of students' lives, that maybe we kind of look at kind of combining those things from an educational perspective at the same time. 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Again, thanks, board. I definitely appreciate the discussion. We'll move on to item 13, information, starting with item A, auditioning for academic classes. I do also want to make a reminder, these are information items only. I think we'll have a bit of explanation, have any comments from the board, but we're not planning on taking public comment for the information items.
Yeah, this is simply a update on the process that our VAPA team has been working on in terms of auditioning for academic classes that are related to VAPA, or going through skills assessments for classes that are related to VAPA. And so these are the one that was included in the document is one that is kind of finalized. There are a lot of other ones that have been used over the past years that will be gone through this year by the same team and finalized as the year progresses.
Great. Any questions or thoughts from the board on this? Ms. Lofthouse?
I did have a question to potentially see the rubrics that were referenced in there, and I know Mr. Swanson let you know that I was interested in that.
Yeah, and I got a hold of them about 5 minutes before the meeting. So
perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just a reminder. So those are the ones that are still being worked on. Those aren't considered finalized yet.
Okay.
Although I think several of them have been used in the past, but I believe it's the intention of the team to kind of go through all of them, to kind of just agree, maybe adjust a little bit, and then finalize.
Okay. I also did have a couple other just thoughts when I was looking through it. In terms of, I understand it. I understand auditioning for classes. I understand why they have that process. However, my concern is that we are being exclusive, and we are potentially not allowing students to participate in things like a production, for example, that maybe that's something that they would just always want to do, and that was a dream of theirs for their high school experience. And the only class that puts on that production is the advanced drama class. And so are we telling students that if your parents couldn't afford Eldorado Music Theater as a child, that you will never get to be in one of the productions at the school? Or what type of opportunities are we providing for the students that are not maybe auditioning and getting in, can we, or how are we allowing the opportunity for students to have those experiences? One of the first things that came to my mind was, like, a special ed student might not be comfortable, thank you. Might not be comfortable going in and doing an audition, but would thrive with the opportunity to be on stage. And so my concern is eliminating opportunity for students because they don't meet the criteria in the audition. And without seeing the criteria, I don't know if it's inclusive or not. Based on what I've seen and experienced, I feel like the answer would be no. And so my concern is the inclusiveness in a class that is required to audition and who we are excluding and what that looks like. Sure.
So I can tell you that in some of my experiences, I have actually heard some of the folks, for instance, in the Mosers at Folsom High School, talking about the difference between high school theater and community theater. And so that we are allowing and bringing in kids who are special needs. We are allowing kids that maybe don't have quite the experience, that they definitely wouldn't, probably make the audition and get the part in community theater, but that the same student that might be cut from that production wouldn't be cut from the high school production. That obviously some kids don't get the role that they want, right? Because you have 7 people auditioning for the lead. That's a different experience, right? But for the most part, I know that the teachers really work hard to make sure that it is an inclusive model. And I can speak personally to that several special ed students I know have been in the productions at Folsom High School, at Vista Del Lago, and at Cordova High School. So, but if you wanted to explore that further, obviously what we need to do is invite the teachers here to talk about it.
I think for me, again, without seeing what their criteria is, for one. For two, I just want to know more about who is it that we're eliminating this opportunity for, because, or maybe that's not the right route. Maybe it's what opportunities are we providing for the students that maybe don't make it in the first round, or the audition for the advanced class, and what opportunities are we providing for them to have those experiences that they're seeking in that audition. They're seeking, obviously, a role in a play. So do we have like a second play that the students that maybe didn't get the big production play? So what opportunities are we providing for the kids that are not meeting the criteria for these classes? Or how are we providing support for those students to be able to participate in the class when maybe that first audition didn't get them there? How are we getting them the skills and the knowledge they need to be able to do those things that they might want to do?
Any other questions from the board? Ms. George?
Does this policy mean that, is this only for advanced classes, or would it be for like a 9th or just like a beginning level class, or any sort of,
Advanced.
an advanced class? So, and there's like a definition of like what is considered an advanced class on there, I'm guessing? Okay.
Great. And I think if we do want to answer some of those questions, maybe that's something we can talk about during the future agenda items, if that's something we want to bring back. But thank you.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm happy to work with Dr. Huber and collecting that information to report back out to the board in a board brief, so that you have it. And then if you want to choose to bring it back to the public, to the dais, we can. But I'll get the information.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item B, 2024, 2025 budget book. Mr. Martin, I think we're passing that over to you.
Good evening.
Real quick. Yeah. Mr. Martin, this is an information item. You actually could have done that from your chair, but even
I was told I'm supposed to stand up.
No, the directions were for presentations, not information items, but I really do appreciate you in your ill state coming to the lectern to present. Thank you.
I appreciate the clarification. This evening, you have electronically received the 170-page budget book in color. And so this is an annual document that is generated based off of the adopted budget back in June. But now it's inclusive of all of our site details, along with summary details of the district, as well as an introductory letter by our superintendent. So if there's any questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
I was actually just hoping you could start at page 1 and
If you like.
thank you, Mr. Martin. Appreciate any questions from the board.
Seven slide, Mandy.
I'm sure we will email them to you if we have them. Thank you. All right, on to item 14, superintendent's report.
I'll just start off by saying to Sean and his team, that's a pretty impressive document. I'm glad that that we have it for your review, but also as a district who's really working hard to align its resources and support for all of our students. The budget book is a good place to start. So thank you, Sean, to your team, and for your delightful presentation. Two quick updates for me from the superintendent's report. First was about SAB. I'm always so impressed with the two of you. I really, one of the things today that you did while I was there was you had all the students get up from where they were and mix up. And while I said to a student, this is my wife's she hates that. She's an introvert. She hates doing that, but she always benefits because she learns from someone new. So I really appreciate that because we are one district with amazing schools, and that gives all of our SAB members the opportunity to learn from other students in other school communities. So really good job there. And then Mia, to your point earlier that you said, you guys have a question about getting all the information back to school campuses. If you need our help, my help, this team's help in facilitating that or whatever, you just let us know and we'll take care of that. With whether it's just the format or if you need the labor to make sure that it gets there, we're happy to help. So let us know. So, and then the other report I have, so back on the August 1st board meeting, this governance team approved 5-0 for us to go out to refinance 2 bonds for SFID 4 and 5. And the estimated savings to our taxpayers in those communities was $1.5 million. And I'm very pleased to announce that those bonds were sold yesterday, and we actually doubled the savings. We saved taxpayers $3,032,426. So I just appreciate this governance team's leadership and stewardship of our community. And I just wanted to announce that. And as Trustee Reed said, this is something we should spike the football over because this is a big win. So thank you for the support on that.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Appreciate it. All right, and on to board member reports. We'll start with our student board members. Ms. George.
So we had our SAB meeting today. It was super good, and I thought it was really cool because I joined SAB 10th grade, and I know in 9th grade it was online. So, and in 10th grade there was like 30 kids max, and it's super cool to be on the other side and because I was in SAB for 2 years before I became board member, and it's just crazy to see that we have over 100 kids now who are the nicest kids ever that I've ever met, and they are super caring and they want to be involved, and they're all natural leaders. And it's just crazy to see how it went from 30 to 104 kids today. So yeah, and that's all for SAB I had. And then we had homecoming, but we didn't have a homecoming game, which was really sad. But we made it work with the homecoming parade. And yeah, homecoming went well, and that's all I have. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill.
Thank you. I had the opportunity, was it last weekend? I was picked by Rotary, the volunteer organization, to go counsel some 8th grade students over the weekend at Grizzly Creek Ranch. It was called Regal. It was Rotary 8th grade leadership program. I was one of the counselors for them. We had one adult counselor and one high school counselor for each 10 students or something. It was over 100 8th grade students, and I actually I went over to the ranch. We slept in a cabin with 9 8th graders. It was fun. It was fun. However, I did learn a lot from the person leading it. Her name is Rochelle Wellams. I actually attended RILA, which is kind of the junior and senior version of the 8th grade camp. So I was the one being counseled and mentored by it was week long instead of a week. weekend. So I kind of got to be on the other side of it, and I actually learned a lot based on just like, dealing with kids in this age range. And I was really excited to do it because I knew I could learn skills that would translate to SAB, because a lot of SAB is in this age range. It's 8th graders. Like I learned, I actually learned the get up and mix around. I said the exact words that Rochelle said during that camp, and I was actually proud of myself. I was like, yeah, I really did that, because I hated doing it during Ryla, and now I got to make them do it, and I actually think it worked out. I think it worked out very well, and I might make that a monthly thing where I make them get up every single meeting. But yeah, I'm really glad I was given that opportunity. I was chosen by Rotary to go do that, and yeah, it was a great experience. There was only 9 other counselors my age, so it was quite the long weekend, but those 72 hours was very worth it. I'm glad I can translate those skills to SAB. At Cordova High School on Tuesday, we held a mock election where we worked with the city, where they would host like a little election, and we had students come in during their history periods. I worked with Dr. Jackson, and I had a bunch of volunteers, all from SAB, the Cordova part of SAB. We all helped facilitate the election. We helped students go in and out. We made it smooth. It started out rough, but at the very end, it was very smooth. I'm glad we kind of helped facilitated that, because it got students like prepared for actually voting. And, I was really saddened to realize like a year ago that I'm actually 10 days younger to vote. Like I was 10 days away from voting this election, but I was born 10 days late. And so that's something that, some of the seniors now can vote. I know a lot of people who can vote right now, and I'm glad that they got that opportunity to like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do in, 2 months, a month and a half? It's getting close. 1 month. 1 month. It's getting really close. It's getting really close. I thought it was 2 months. But I'm glad that the Cordova High School gets to, experience that and like translate it into a real world thing. It's like one of our civic duties as Americans to vote for your representatives. I'd also like I forgot to shout out the Sutter leaders, the tour guides. They were a great help, especially since this whole moving meeting locations area is so different. They were the first school that we went to outside of Cordova. I kind of facilitated the Cordova one. It was easy because, I basically live there. But at Sutter, it was kind of hard to I couldn't really be there in person where everything was happening. So I had to kind of put my full faith in the student government at Sutter, and they really delivered. I'm really glad they did, because everything went perfectly smoothly at the end. Even though it was a little cramped because of our time, but we made it work. I'm really glad that their student government kind of stepped up. And lastly, I'd like to thank my own student government for throwing an amazing homecoming game and rally. It was a very packed week, and I was with them a lot, even though I'm not in student government, and they were busy. They were working their butts off all week, and I'd just like to give them a shout out. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lofthouse.
I just wanted to start out and say congratulations on the 104 people. That's amazing. Nothing brings me more joy than kids getting the leadership skills and the chance to have a voice. So great job. And I know that you lifted them up to share their voices. So good job. And I also know a ton of middle school get up and mix around. So feel free to reach out. I can give you some new ones too. And in terms of elections, I think we're coming up on sort of a month of polarization, potentially. And so I think that just that simple reminder of just kind of keeping your head up, regardless of where you stand on certain situations, certain people who are running, things like that, and keeping it I actually was kind of relating it to tonight. I know we don't always agree on everything, but the way that we were able to have conversation and hear each other's opinions and then move on and either agree to disagree or get to a point where we are kind of finding that middle ground. And I think that I saw something on social media about the mock trial at Cordova High School that people were concerned that that was happening. And as a social science teacher, I was like, no, these are the opportunities that we really need to educate our kids in what it looks like to be an active citizen in the United States. And so I'm very glad it went well. And I am glad that people are able to use their voice and just keep that civil discourse. And I think moving forward this month, we might see a lot more of it. And so just kind of keeping that in mind of us being role models, but also just being a positive citizen. That's all.
Ms. Larry?
Yeah, so I actually really appreciated the mock election because I have a freshman and a senior, and we actually went through all the propositions. And so I really appreciated that you guys also included those because there's a lot of really heavy language. And, so being able to sit down and really explain what that is, and that we do have a civic duty to make sure that we're digging into those issues and that we're really like understanding, because sometimes it can be tricky. What does a yes mean versus a no? And sometimes you want to vote no, and that really means yes. That can be very confusing for students. And so I really appreciated you guys starting that process to get them prepared to be engaged civically. So thank you for doing that. I got to attend Navigators. They made little arcade games in the 5th grade class. So that was really cool. They had tickets and you like to play the game, and it was like very interactive, and it was a great project by the 5th grade students there. So very cool there. And then today I attended the dog show for the Ag Academy, and that was very cool. And the students made their dogs, and then we had best in show and best in breed and everything like that. So it was a very, very fun, cool experience there. And then last night we did have our safety committee meeting, and we talked mostly about 3 issues. One of them was kind of looking at our campus monitors and what other districts had for job descriptions for them and what the expectations were for them compared to what we had. And the safety committee was really like digging into kind of looking at where we're going to go with that for our campus monitors. The other thing was really our safety plans and how we're communicating that, and the different categories of when do we go into lockdown. And I think the best part about that was they now have specific protocols for the students that it's very clear that when it is a lockdown situation, this is what you're to do. When it is a shelter in place, this is what you're to do. Because I think prior to that, it was kind of vague from a student perspective of what that would look like. So really making that very clear on a chart where a student could like look at it and know exactly what it is that they're to do. So I think we're really working hard to clean up that language and make our protocols very specific to that. And then the third thing that we talked about was the possibility of a third SRO on the Rancho Cordova side and what that would look like. And we had some good discussion on budgets and roles and different things like that. So I know we'll be working through that in the next few months. But it was good. Hopefully we have more people who can come to that. And, I think we'll reach out to you. We didn't have any students last night. So it's always really super helpful for us to have the students' perspective on safety because they're in it. And, maybe a few more teachers. We had some administration that was there, but not very many teachers. So I think if we could really try to do a reach out there, because again, they're the ones who are the boots on the ground in the situation. So that is all I have to report on that.
Thank you. Mr. Reed.
All right. Being ever so slightly superstitious, I'm going to knock on wood first. I have to say that, at least from my observation, in the 6 years I've been on the board, this is the most smooth start to a school year that I have seen. Like the least amount of drama, the least amount of emails from parents and students and teachers. It's almost a little scary. Again, but you know what? I am just, it makes me happy because obviously we're doing something right holistically within the entire school community. And I hope it continues to the degree it can. But I certainly wouldn't say that I've heard that this situation is necessarily throughout all the school districts. I think this might be somewhat unique to our district right now. But anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge it and thank all of the students, all of the teachers, all of the staff, all of the parents, all of the folks in this building, our new superintendent, our board, and congratulate, at least, again, this is my perception. So anyway, I didn't want to let it go without notice. The other thing I just wanted to announce is the next school board meeting. I will not be here. I am going to my freshman son's family weekend, so traveling across the country again. But I will be with you in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Van and Mia, I just want to thank you for your hard work with SAB. I mean, I was obviously there when you guys were at Cordova, and I didn't have the opportunity to be at Sutter, so I apologize for that. But you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And Van, your work with Ryla and everything, I mean, it's very important with the Rotary Foundation. And I just had a question. Is there an Interact on campus?
Yes, there is.
Okay. You part of that?
No, I'm not. I'm part of Mock, though, and they were also
okay.
Rotary.
Yeah.
Rotary.
Okay, awesome. You should be part of, I mean, yeah. Okay. We'll get you in one way or another. And also, I just wanted to congratulate our superintendent on his soon-to-be first 100 days. Who's counting? But thank you for all your work. And I want to thank the staff and for all their work on what we're doing right now for the board. And I want to thank Navigator, Mather Heights, Peter J. Shields, and Cordova and Rancho Cordova Elementary for their hospitality. I have not left the Folsom schools out. I will start their visits next week. So with that being said, I'm done.
Thank you. And for me, just one quick comment. Betty Jo, it's really good to see you tonight. Your smiling face. Glad to have you back. On to item 16, advanced planning. Our next board meeting, regularly scheduled board meeting is October 17th, right back here.
Mr. President, if I may, I'm sorry.
Of course.
I will not be at next week's meeting, so it'll be three of you all there. Just don't start approving a lot of crazy stuff. I will actually
everything for the year.
Right.
At that meeting.
I will actually be in New York as well, attending a youth education and advocacy conference. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great. Yeah, thank you for letting us know. So nobody else is allowed to get sick or anything. We've all got to be here, but hope you guys both have a enjoyable time over on the East Coast. Item B, 12-month board calendar. That is there for your review. Item C, suggested future agenda items. I did want to make a couple of comments. First, we do have scheduled a communication devices board policy for tonight. I guess we will move that forward to whenever it makes sense again. If Ms. Swanson, you can be working on that with your staff. And then I know last meeting we discussed moving that IYT item. So just a heads up, that would be a November 21st board meeting. Other than that, are there any other suggested future agenda items anybody would like to add?
I would love to add, and it sort of came up in my questions regarding the audition classes. I'd also like to see similar information item in terms of like AP and honors and what that looks like. And actually Riverview STEM or any programs that require any type of application or audition testing, whatever those different programs we have, I would love to kind of see the breakdown of those classes or programs.
Great. Yeah, that
Sounds good. A point of clarification on that. Do you want that to come back here? Would you like us to collect that information and share with the board?
I feel like it would be helpful for the whole board to see, but maybe that's...
Well, no, they would also...
okay.
It could be shared with the board, and then after review, if something we want to add,
Sure.
we could add.
Yeah, that's
Does that
fine.
work?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Swanson.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I have one other piece of clarification. On October 17th, we have a staffing update on bus drivers, which the team is prepared to do, but I know that there are two board members that are going to be absent on that day. Should we continue to move forward with doing that? Or would we like to push that? Probably not to the November 7th meeting because we already have 4 items that we're going to address on this calendar, but maybe to the November 21st. But I'm happy to follow your lead on any of.
I'm perfectly fine with you moving forward. While I would love to be there, it is an important topic, and I don't want to delay that topic because I can't be at that meeting.
And that's a,
Chris, okay,
good. Okay,
thank you.
perfect. Anything else from the board under suggested future agenda items? Okay. Not hearing any, so that would move us into item 17, which is recess to closed session. We did finish up our closed session business the first time around, so we'll move all the way down to item 21, adjournment. Unless there's any objection from the board, we will adjourn. Not hearing any objection, we are adjourned.